The dragon demon race was born from dragons deceived by cunning demons. Azell, a fearless knight, defeated the dragon demon King Atein and ended the chaos. Now, Azell is gravely weakened and lying on his sickbed, thin and pale. Carlos, the loyal magician and best friend, tells Azell magic originated from the dragon demon race. Azell asks Carlos for a fun story, not one he already knows. Carlos recalls their enduring friendship forged in life or death battles. Carlos explains that spirit order magicians resemble the dragon demon race in magic use. Azell laments the cursed legacy of the dragon demon race with a sour expression. Carlos laughs bitterly, proud they fought the dragon demon race using their own power. Carlos explains the dragon demon race and dragons share a life cycle of hibernation and activity. Azell hears how dragons enter a defenseless hibernation to heal major injuries. Carlos reveals a high-risk plan to induce Azell into a dragon, like hibernation. Azell is shocked to realize this might be his only chance to survive. Carlos urges Azell to trust him and take the risk of this new magical technique. Azell hesitates briefly but nods, willing to gamble his life for survival. Carlos prepares mystical runes glowing faintly in the sick room to begin the ritual. Azell lies back down, eyes closing as the ritual starts, entering the hibernation state. Carlos watches over Azell, hopeful that this new magic will save his friend. Azell awakens from a long slumber, hearing distant explosions from afar. He slowly moves his stiff fingers and toes after a long sleep, feeling his body regain warmth. Azell struggles to lift an arm after an hour of effort, hoping to find a way out. He realizes he is trapped inside a narrow coffin, like space, surrounded by soft walls. Azell recalls his heroic past and the curse that forced his long magical sleep. He struggles pressing against the coffin lid in vain, doubt and frustration mounting. He suspects a magical lock holds him in place and curses his friend Carlos for this prison. Azell gathers his last reserves of internal spiritual energy to break the prison. Despite his depleted reserves, he initiates a powerful energy burst to destroy the coffin lid. The explosion of energy lights up the dark chamber, shaking the air with raw force. He bursts free underground, releasing destructive blue energy and escaping burial. He struggles to breathe and realizes he is buried deeply in the earth, desperate for air. He sizes up the violent force that breached the stone structure, surprised at the destruction. Azell bursts to the surface, blinded by sunlight, fragile from his long prison. He knows thirst and hunger threaten his life and starts weakly searching for relief. Distant voices approach, alerting him to others nearby, uncertain if friends or foes. A centurion with youthful confidence and sharp gaze confronts Azell cautiously. Giles questions Azell's identity while soldiers prepare to assist the weakened man. He drinks stolen water gratefully, feeling faint relief from his parched body. Giles secures more canteens from his men as Azell's strength slowly returns. He maximizes absorption with secret spirit order arts, feeling his body swell steadily. Arriving at the excavation camp, Azell gazes at the ruins that held his silent prison. He suspects the excavation led to his awakening and wonders how much time has passed. Giles leads Azell to his personal barracks for rest and questions later. Azell feels embarrassed but grateful as he is given a blanket to cover his nakedness. Giles explains the excavation mission and demands Azell's identity before revealing the blast's connection. Azell struggles to gather words, overwhelmed by uncertainty and exhaustion. Giles advises rest and a doctor's exam while preparing for further questions later. He reflects on Giles' noble demeanor and wonders about his own circumstances. Spare garments arrive. Azell accepts them gratefully in his dire condition. Azell is escorted to the army doctor, whose shock hints at the man's dire state. He looks better than before but still monstrous after rehydration. He struggles to understand new words, feeling like an outsider to this language. He recalls how army doctor and checkup are foreign terms in his time. The army doctor examines him with suspicion and shock at Azell's condition. Rick suspects black magic experiments created this monstrous state. He silently approves the black magic excuse as a believable cover story. He's amazed Azell is alive despite such a dire condition. Rick orders feeding and hydration for Azell, warning about his starvation. Azell, wounded by being called a monster, recalls his former pride. Rick offers Azell water and warns not to overexert himself after learning the spirit order. Azell nervously misunderstands Rick's concern as fear, feeling broken. Rick fetches warm water for Azell, who flinches seeing his monster, like reflection. He mourns the loss of his once proud form, especially his hair. Rick gently asks if Azell is unaware of his appearance, showing sympathy. Soup is brought to him. Each spoonful visibly revives his parched body. He introduces himself and gently probes Azell's uncertain memory. He answers the name Azell Zestringer with vague uncertainty. Rick doubts his memory, recognizing the severe toll it implies. He admits his memory loss but recalls he is a magician, hinting at mysterious past. Rick's face darkens as he contemplates Azell's hints of suffering. He urges Azell to rest in the barracks as dinner is prepared for him. He eats carefully, obeying Rick's warnings despite hunger and weakness. His body visibly improves after a day of rest and nourishment. He meditates, painfully aware his magical power and strength are gone. He realizes his rings of life, source of power, have vanished after deep sleep. He accepts the curse's end and focuses on rebuilding his power from scratch. He begins spirit order training, stirring mana within, while Rick watches in surprise. Azell resonates with mana, forming a bright mana aggregate that surprises Rick instantly. Rick watches in disbelief as Azell drinks the dense mana aggregate like water. He channels the absorbed magical energy throughout his body, invigorating his drained spirit. He forms a faint ring, shaped origin of life with the remaining mana, but it feels too small and fleeting. Azell's vision spins from exhaustion, barely holding balance as he crosses his legs. Rick warns Azell not to overexert himself and questions the unusual mana drinking technique. Azell requests to try eating a normal meal tomorrow, confident in his strength recovery. Rick complains about Azell's casual tone but reveals his own informal way of speaking. Rick feels an eerie familiarity with Azell despite his strange appearance and story. Azell reflects on his ability to subtly control his aura to feel more welcoming and calm. Rick comments on Giles picking up a strange man, hinting at the unusual situation. Azell asks Rick several questions, despite warnings about his casual behavior. Rick reveals their location near Balan Forest on Relaine Kingdom's western border. Azell learns it's the year 222 of the Atein calendar, shocking him deeply. He despairs realizing more than 200 years have passed since he last awoke. Rick asks about Azell's lost memory and the gap in his recollections. Azell admits he is uncertain about his exact age, but guesses he is under 30. Rick is surprised by Azell's youthful appearance despite the centuries past. Azell attempts to sleep but stays awake all night, haunted by memories of Carlos. The next morning, Azell and a soldier search for Giles, beginning a new day. Giles stands disciplined and immaculate despite the early hour, greeting Azell. Giles asks if Azell has eaten. Azell thanks him for his care and support. Rick is surprised to see Azell eating a full meal, his health clearly improving. Giles confronts Azell about his obscured memories and uneasy identity. Azell admits his memory loss but remains respectful to Giles' noble status. Giles doubts Azell's story yet acknowledges the gravity of his condition. Giles decides to let Azell stay but must seek his lieutenant's approval first. Azell offers to meet the lieutenant immediately but learns he is unavailable. Giles explains the lieutenant is receiving an important visitor and will return soon. Azell agrees to wait in the camp and occupy the medical barracks. Azell queries Giles about his military status and rings of life. Giles reveals his rank and reacts defensively to Azell's insight. Azell admits to sensing Giles' power beyond visible rings of life. Giles accepts Azell's apology and dismisses further questioning. Azell leaves the barracks with a reserved nod after the tense exchange. At the excavation site, Rick and the chef watch Azell transform after eating voraciously. Azell explains his enormous appetite and hydration needs to a concerned Rick. Rick warns about Azell's excessive intake while Azell dismisses his concerns confidently. Azell stresses the need for gradual recovery and hydration after starvation. Rick urges acceptance of inexplicable events to deal with unpredictable situations. Azell returns for another serving, praising the chef without regard for onlookers' surprise. Soldier and Rick speculate wildly about Azell's unusual eating and mysterious nature. Giles reflects alone on Azell's strange power and his own hidden strength. He doubts Azell's words but is unsettled by the man's undeniable presence and mystery. Giles questions Rick about Azell's condition and learns about his rapid recovery after eating. Azell performs a one-finger handstand push-up balancing on 3 small stones, astonishing all. Azell greets Giles respectfully after finishing his intense balance exercise. Giles and Azell engage in a calm exchange about titles and mutual respect. Azell explains his rapid bodily recovery through eating and spirit technique mastery. Giles listens, intrigued, as Azell elaborates on spirit order and heart rhythm control. Azell claims spirit order practitioners can manipulate their body through heart rhythm mastery. Giles nods in reluctant agreement at Azell's miraculous transformation and mastery. Giles challenges Azell to spar, curious about his skills and recovery. Rick reacts with disbelief to Giles' sparring challenge, doubting Azell's readiness. Azell welcomes the sparring request and suggests a non-injurious technique battle. Giles accepts the idea, proposing to meet again for sparring after lunch tomorrow. Rick warns Azell of Giles' skills, but Azell remains confident and unbothered. Azell flexes flabby flesh, poking fun at Rick's skeptical reaction. Rick doubts anyone can gain flesh so quickly, while Azell insists he can bulk up soon. Azell questions Giles' age and skill, sparking a discussion about his achievements. Rick details Giles' rapid rise and the respect he gained despite his youth. Azell contemplates the standards of his era compared to the current knight's strength. He briefly recalls the Dragon-Demon War and the sacrifices that improved knight quality. Azell resumes his finger push-ups with determination, practicing despite fatigue. Rick mutters to himself, bewildered by Azell's unusual strength and mystery. Azell chuckles quietly, resuming his intense training without responding to Rick. The Balan Forest is no place for humans. Monsters roam unchecked on the kingdom's western border. A group of humans in black clothes move through the heart of the monster-infested forest, unafraid. Suspicious conversations reveal their recognition of the approaching dragon-demon princess. They doubt sending the dragon-demon princess to a remote border but accept her quiet appearance offers a tactical edge. Rumors circulate that the ruins deep inside the forest belong to the legendary Archmage Carlos. Despite Carlos having died 150 years ago, his relics remain highly valuable and mysterious. Azell moves slowly, painstakingly controlling each balanced step, sweat pouring from his body. Rick watches, amazed by Azell's slow, exhausting movements he calls a unique training method. Azell explains slow and fast chain movements. Rick struggles to understand such rigorous training. Azell suddenly attacks Rick's shoulder with crushing magical pressure, crippling Rick instantly. Rick struggles under the invisible crushing pressure. His muscles scream and body is helpless. Azell reveals this is his special training method, applying magical force to temper the body. Rick painfully crawls, mustering energy to move under the constant weight of magical force. Azell mocks Rick's endurance while calmly maintaining a higher level of the burden. After 30 seconds, the pressure lifts and Rick collapses, overwhelmed by the ordeal. Azell challenges Rick to improve his strength despite his role as an army doctor and soldier. Azell explains balancing magical force with spirit order to strengthen muscles quickly. He meditates deeply, forming one incomplete but stable ring of life to regulate his energy pulse. Having finished training, Azell leads Rick to eat, treating mealtimes with precious care. After eating, Azell and Rick wait outside Giles' barracks for a report from his aide. Giles motions for them to sit, preparing to discuss the patrol findings in detail. Giles worries about the lack of monster activity despite the large troop deployment. Rick explains how the elite scouting parties keep the forest under control so far. Giles suspects unknown dangers lurking deep inside the forest beyond patrol reach. Azell and Giles agree to spar silently to test their skills away from prying eyes. They set rules to move slowly and avoid contact, following ancient sparring methods. Azell swings the practice sword slowly, testing his recovering body and mind. Azell and Giles engage in a slow tactical spar focusing on reading movements. Rick watches, fascinated by the magical force lines invisible to normal eyes. Azell stops, exhausted of magical force after 5 minutes sparring with Giles. Azell reveals his limited magical force, surprising Giles with his skill despite it. Azell questions Giles about his skill level compared to other knights in private. Giles reveals only 3 cord. Rope masters remain in the Western Border Guard, surprising Azell. Azell reflects on the decline in quality of knights and their advanced combat techniques. Azell hides his full strength strategically while sparring with Giles to avoid suspicion. Azell makes a request to Giles to work as a laborer until his position is settled. Giles consents to Azell's work request, adding a sparring condition twice a day. Azell smiles confidently, ready to begin labor and training together with Giles. Azell spends 4 days helping laborers excavate the ruins, moving rubble around the collapsed entrance. He learns from laborers that before his awakening, the ruins' entrance was sealed by strong magic. Azell recalls how the magical protection failed exactly when he woke, allowing the ruins' entrance to collapse. He wonders if the magical force was prepared by Carlos as part of a plan for his awakening. During breaks, he trains Spirit Order, sparring briefly with Giles in the early morning and evening. Inside the medical barracks, Rick questions Azell about his unusual method of drinking magic aggregates. Azell admits he doesn't remember why, but explains this method fills his energy pulse quickly. He reflects how normal Spirit Order practitioners absorb mana through pores, but his energy pulse is dried, needing concentrated magic. After hard work, Azell successfully forms a single complete ring of life, defying expectations and accelerating recovery. Azell plans to try dual banding, a risky advanced Spirit Order technique to double ring layers for more strength. He recalls Carlos' simulations and expects this method to greatly surpass normal ring masters if successful. He's unsure if dual banding will work with his body but is determined to try while his energy pulse rebuilds. Rick explains how the healing arts evolved from temple priests to a medical association merging healing and alchemy. Rick tells how Sage Bayan broke temple secrecy on medicines, revolutionizing healing with widespread knowledge. Azell marvels at how much the world has changed while he was asleep for years. Rick jokes about Azell's lack of muscle gain despite his promises to show physical progress soon. Azell grits his teeth, determined to build strength despite the slow progress. Rick shares news of the Dragon Demon Princess visiting the ruins inside the Balan Forest. Azell is shocked and confused, knowing little about the Dragon Demon Princess or her kingdom. Rick questions Azell's ignorance of the Dragon Demon War, clearly surprised at his amnesia. Rick explains the Dragon Demon War history to Azell, mentioning the legendary hero Azell Karzark's role. Rick notes that the legendary hero shared Azell's name and crimson hair, which puzzles him. Rick sympathizes with Azell's sorry state after his long absence and curse-induced decline. Rick reveals some humans sided with dragon demons during the war, creating complex alliances. Azell reflects silently, realizing dragon demon allies he fought alongside may still live after 220 years. Azell struggles with loneliness but holds a fragile hope that those allies might still exist in this changed world. Rick describes the post-war persecution of dragon demons and their marginalized half-breed descendants. Rick shares the rise of the Rulian kingdom allied with dragon demons through royal bloodlines. Rick explains the royal family law requiring dragon demon blood in monarchs to maintain the alliance. Azell considers the bittersweet co-existence deal between humans and dragon demons. Azell asks why the dragon demon princess visits the ruins, Rick reveals the ruins may hold secrets linked to Archmage Carlos. Azell chuckles bitterly while recalling Carlos' rise to legendary status during his slumber. Dragon Demon Princess Arietta briefly awakens in a royal carriage heading toward the ruins. Arietta feels watched and disturbed, prompting her servant Enora's concern as they near their destination. Arietta quickly falls back asleep, despite sensing a mysterious gaze while Enora struggles not to sleep. Enora prepares Arietta by brushing her hair and helping her dress in a magical uniform coat. The carriage arrives at the western border fortress, guarded by vigilant soldiers. Arietta remarks on the unexpected peaceful journey through the dangerous Balan forest. Arietta fixes her gaze on an unseen point in the distance, sensing something unusual. Arietta senses a faint, unusual dragon magic at the construction site. Arietta's gaze locks on Azell, the red-haired youth with keen blue eyes watching her. Azell is surprised by the strong dragon magic emanating from Arietta. Arietta suddenly appears before Azell in a blur of speed, her coat and hair whipping in the wind. Arietta questions Azell's identity, noticing his faint dragon magic. Azell denies having any idea about his own dragon magic presence. Giles cautiously approaches and explains Azell's mysterious past to Arietta. Arietta receives Giles' permission to question Azell further. Azell reflects inwardly on the problematic attention from the Dragon Demon Princess. Rick and Azell talk about the stir caused by Arietta's interest. Rick suggests Azell could gain by impressing the Dragon Demon Princess. Azell dismisses the idea of serving the royal family despite his unknown past. Azell abruptly senses danger and orders Rick to alert others. Azell explains the ground vibrations signaling a monster ambush. Azell identifies magical concealment hiding the monster's approach. Azell perceives the monster's hive mind, an unhidden mass of apprehension. A faint magical flare arcs over the forest, signaling the start of an ambush. The flare explodes at the camp center, igniting chaos and screams. Arietta appears mid-air, silver hair swirling, ready to face the ambush. Azell hands Rick a protective talisman and charges into the dust-filled battle. Chaos erupts as the excavation site falls into pandemonium after the initial ambush. Monsters disguise their presence, now pouring out to overwhelm the confused soldiers. Arietta commands the earth to rise and bury the monsters charging towards her. She summons a brutal rain of stone that pierces the monsters brutally. Arietta cleaves through monsters and trees with a radiant white sword slash. The monster spirit breaks as Arietta calls for commanders to rally their troops. Arietta fights back a creeping aggregate of darkness with her white blade. Amidst battle smoke, a mysterious cloaked figure appears and applauds mockingly. The cloaked dragon demon taunts Arietta, revealing a murky green dragon magic stone. Arietta channels her rage of the dragon, launching a deadly strike through the veiled foe. The battlefield falls silent, awestruck by the destructive power wielded by the Dragon Demon Princess. Azell jumps in just in time, blocking a black blade aimed at Arietta. Azell, struggling to hold the blade, asks Arietta for help to finish off the foe. Arietta flings earth into the air, exposing the black-robed hooded man once more. The cloaked man boasts of his talent to dodge underground, angering Azell. Azell charges with instantaneous movement, appearing far ahead before ascending into the sky. Azell surprises the enemy mid-air by stabbing him with a hidden knife. Azell's fierce shout unleashes waves of negative energy that disrupt the enemy's mind. Seizing the moment, Azell strikes the man's face, but his sword shatters on the enemy's shield. Azell tersely remarks on his broken sword, undeterred in the fight despite losing his weapon. Azell spots another cloaked dragon demon companion with a bluish dragon stone. The female cloaked figure hoarsely praises Azell's prowess in battle. Azell laments narrowly missing a chance to finish the injured enemy. Azell recognizes the dragon demon's superiority complex, mirroring old rivalries. As silence falls, Arietta and Azell sense more hidden adversaries watching the battle unfold. Azell faces Regina and her companion, concealing his knife to confuse them. Azell knows the enemy's skill level overwhelms them all. He laments lost peaceful days after surviving so long in war. Regina orders retreat as Kyrian growls threats at Azell but holds back. Azell mocks Kyrian's rage fading, still hiding his second sword. Azell reveals he had two swords all along, hiding one skillfully. He prepares to end this fight decisively, calm but ready. Suddenly, glowing orbs explode overhead, showering the battlefield in blinding light. An hour later, Regina surveys the devastated ruin excavation in command. She commands her team to trap the dragon demon princess before she reaches the fortress. She reveals her identity as Dragon's shadow leader with a sharp, dangerous demeanor. She warns to be cautious of Azell's strength despite their seeming advantage. She orders to circle and wear down their enemy using forest orcs. She confirms the ruin's origin as Carlos and prepares for reinforcements. She notes the urgency of a race against time as enemies regroup. Azell watches over Arietta, Inora, and Rick safely from a tree above. He is burdened deeply by the responsibility he carries in protecting them. Azell focuses on protecting Rick and Giles, knowing the enemy's true target is Arietta. Rick shows surprise at Azell's concealment spell, affirming his gratitude for the protection. Azell explains the secret nature of the Spirit Order magic tied to mind control and divination. Rick thanks Azell sincerely, surprised he survived thanks to the concealment and support. Azell warns Arietta about Dragon's shadow targeting her, breaking formalities with confidence. Arietta confesses ignorance of Dragon's shadow while recalling her dedicated service for the throne. Azell and Arietta acknowledge the risk while pondering the mysterious motives of their enemy. Azell senses enemies approaching, despite Arietta's inability to hear them. Azell warns about enemies masking sounds with magic and urges a swift retreat. As they move, Arietta detects hidden foe observing them and warns not to show their lips. Azell reflects bitterly on losing his former strength and the challenges ahead. Azell questions Rick about the fortress location but learns Rick is unfamiliar with the area. Rick admits he never left the encampment, prompting Azell's frustrated response. Arietta offers to guide them to the western border fort but warns it lies in the enemy's direction. Forced to detour due to enemy approach, Azell steels himself for the fight ahead. Suddenly, forest orcs ambush the group with a loud shriek, catching them by surprise. Arietta's roar infused with magic disorients the charging forest orcs, echoing fiercely. She unleashes a radiant light slash against the orcs, but they are shielded by powerful protective magic. Arietta is surprised by the orcs' enchanted protection blocking her attack, sensing a skilled magician's hand. A thunderous lightning strike shakes the forest as a new enemy reveals himself from above. The dark, robed magician claims allegiance to Dragon's shadow and warns Arietta of his power. Azell deflects a magical invisible arrow, proving his battle readiness despite his current limitations. Azell mocks the slow enemy arrow speed and weighs his odds against the two known Dragon's shadow members. Azell assesses that only two Dragon's shadow members are present as Arietta battles forest orcs relentlessly. Arietta relentlessly cuts through the forest orcs, shattering their blades and tearing their bodies. She teleports instantly between the orcs, slicing them before they react to her presence. Arietta's sword is stopped by a magical shield cast by the orc leader, who is stronger than the rest. Despite the orc leader's magical defense, Arietta asserts her dominance with her piercing gaze and words. The orc leader's body shakes under Arietta's overwhelming strength, visibly near collapse. A massive 5-meter tall ogre suddenly appears, shaking the forest with its terrifying presence. Azell instantly moves onto the ogre's shoulder, evading its massive attack with swift precision. Azell stabs deeply into the ogre's ear, causing an internal explosion that fatally wounds the beast. The ogre collapses with a thunderous crash, scattering the remaining forest orcs in terror. Azell lands with ease, retrieving a discarded orc sword, showcasing his ruthless efficiency. Blood wolves with fiery cursed black flames emerge, surrounding Azell in a menacing pack. Dark magical tentacles writhe from the ground, attempting to seize Azell before he escapes using instantaneous movement. Azell confronts a floating mage, parrying magic attacks and breaking through his defenses effortlessly. Azell delivers a fatal stab into the mage's heart and forcefully repels his corpse with a powerful kick. He analyzes the mage's careless defense, recognizing their lack of magical frequency tactics. Azell discards the cracked orc sword and swiftly grabs a new weapon nearby without hesitation. Azell challenges Jackal to face him openly after dodging a deadly ambush attempt. Jackal reveals himself, showing the gunmetal dragon demon stone and igniting a forest fire behind him. Arietta is shocked at Jackal's reckless forest fire meant to block her path to the fort. Jackal taunts Arietta, saying the fire blocks access to the western border fort and targets her specifically. Arietta refuses to back down, fighting orcs and beasts while shielding her companions from the onslaught. Jackal proclaims that the dragon demon princess will soon be captured by Dragon's Shadow. Jackal leaps into the fire and vanishes, leaving Azell and Arietta to prepare for the next battle. Regina confronts a massive earth dragon in the Balan forest, proposing a risky trade. The dragon listens silently, then nods, accepting Regina's perilous offer. Regina explains the task she requires from the dragon, her voice steady despite fear. Azell, Rick, Arietta, and Enora traverse the night, dark forest, weary and cautious. Arietta orders Enora to ride on her back despite Enora's protest, showing her strong will. Azell offers Rick a piggyback. Rick stubbornly declines despite his exhaustion. Azell admits to risking fire to block enemies, explaining his calculated control. Arietta disapproves the risk but acknowledges it was necessary to evade their enemies. Arietta works magic to warm the ground, giving the group respite for brief rest in the cold night. Rick heals Enora's minor injuries as she rests, their bond quiet and caring. Azell offers Arietta the first watch shift, but she chooses sleep despite anxiety. Arietta confesses her fears for her separated companions, but trusts Azell's promise of safety. Arietta admits she followed Azell out of suspicion, doubting his motives at first. She confirms they are allies now, lowering her guard and preparing to rest despite lingering doubts. Arietta quickly falls asleep despite the danger, revealing her rare ability to rest anywhere. Azell watches her sleep with a mix of amazement and surprise at her composed vulnerability. Enora struggles with fear, but Azell helps her sleep with a gentle touch. Rick asks Azell to put him to sleep, and he quickly falls unconscious. Azell gazes pensively at the same stars he once knew before drifting off to sleep. Azell dreams for the first time since waking but senses something unfamiliar calling him. A dream incarnation of Carlos appears as an aged figure to speak with Azell. Carlos explains he is only a remnant left in Azell's energy pulse, unable to truly age. Carlos tells a bitter joke about his baldness and Azell responds with laughter. Carlos admits his time is short. Their conversation cannot last much longer. Carlos reveals Atein, the Dragon Demon King, is still alive and his followers seek to resurrect him. Carlos clarifies this resurrection isn't necromancy but true rebirth, beyond his own magic. Azell wonders if Atein has already resurrected by now or if the attempt failed. Carlos warns that his preparations might not have survived after centuries underground. Carlos explains the ruins' defenses weakening, triggering his spirit's emergence to warn Azell. Carlos hints that help will appear when Azell truly faces danger. Carlos disappears with a final exhortation to live well, leaving Azell alone in his dream. Awaking from the dream, Azell confides to Arietta his shock at Carlos's aged appearance. Azell remembers Carlos as handsome and cold but now faded into an old man's form. Azell feels lonely realizing he has awakened far in the future, separated from all he knew. Azell contemplates Atein's potential revival, feeling unsettled yet unsurprised by the undead. He recalls how often the dead returned as undead in the Dragon Demon War. But the thought of a completely dead entity reviving after so long feels different and unsettling. He wonders if his mysterious awakening in this time is connected to Atein's revival. Shaking off the thoughts, he faces Arietta, whose curious gaze makes him smile. Arietta asks why he stares at her oddly, calling his gaze like looking at a strange animal. He jokes that at least his gaze isn't perverted or he'd be hit by her. They discuss royal protocol and the differences in their backgrounds while noticing the dark night around them. Arietta comments on Azell's young age while Azell feels unsettled about looking older. He promises to cut his beard soon after Arietta says he looks around 40 years old. Arietta shares her warrior upbringing, trained since 7 and hardened by battle at 15. Azell reflects on the burden Arietta carries as a symbol of human, dragon-demon coexistence. Arietta admits fear upon entering her first real battle, haunted by fallen comrades. Azell reveals his own first battle at 10, fighting starving bandits during the Dragon-Demon War. Arietta listens in shock as Azell explains the desperate survival circumstances of his youth. He admits his first kills were out of necessity, fighting to survive in harsh times. Arietta reflects on the cruel realities they both have faced in this world. He admits curiosity about Arietta's swordsmanship teachers and training. Azell shares his scattered training from several teachers, not a single master. He considers those who aided his growth as his masters in life's harsh school. Arietta praises Azell's fighting style, impressed by his detachment from his swords. He explains he values life over swords, willing to live instead of dying with them. Arietta admires him, saying he's amazing while he quips he's just less weird. He uses art of concealment to hide himself and allies, evading the dragon's shadow. He explains their foes lack scouting skills, allowing them to escape by avoiding magical tracks. They sprint and leap through the trees as Arietta carries Enora and Azell rides with Rick. He feels the strain of limited magical force slowing his movement through the forest. They push on through the day without rest, barely surviving on water alone. He asks Arietta how far they are from the fortress to gauge their escape. Azell warns her to sense vibrations beneath their feet, signaling danger. A powerful vibration shakes the forest floor, alerting even Rick and Enora of an approaching dragon. The earth dragon bursts from underground, shaking the forest and crushing trees underfoot. Arietta, amazed and alarmed, realizes the dragon's overwhelming power. He warns that their foe can mobilize dragons, hinting at dangerous power. Regina and Jackal appear, mocking Azell and claiming the dragon as their ally. Azell mocks their foul smell, provoking Regina and Jackal further. Regina threatens Azell that this will be his grave as the earth dragon grows near. Azell probes about his ominous name, which Regina avoids explaining, growing uneasy. Regina coldly admits their linkage to the Dragon Demon King and the ominous name. He connects the dots about Dragon's shadow worshipping the Dragon Demon King Atein. Azell accuses them of plotting to kidnap the princess and revive Atein. Regina confirms the dragon is their secret weapon prepared to kill them. Azell commands Arietta to protect Enora and evade as the dragon attacks. Azell slows his fall with a kick, catching a branch to land safely despite attack. The earth dragon attacks Arietta, who counters swiftly with her sword's magic light. Magical curses from Regina and allies restrict Arietta's movements during the fierce fight. Azell confronts Jackal's fierce sword attack while carrying Rick. Azell blocks Jackal's strike but slides backward from the fierce blow. Azell calmly provokes Jackal, hiding a second sword to strike from a blind spot. Jackal recoils shocked as Azell's concealed sword slashes his hood. Azell mocks Jackal's human nature as the enemy grows enraged but cautious. The earth dragon unleashes its devastating roar, shaking the ground violently. The dragon's roar causes a shockwave that strips soil and foliage from the earth. Arietta carries fainted Enora desperately while evading the devastating dragon. Arietta worries over Enora's faintness and the toll of her instantaneous movement. Earth dragon's crushing footsteps devastate the surroundings, closing in fast. Azell arrives, orders the group to escape while he faces the earth dragon alone. Azell warns Jackal he has no time for him as the injured enemy rises with fury. Jackal bursts with dragon demon magic fury, surrounding himself with blue flames. Azell impales Jackal with 2 swords, ending his rage abruptly. Regina watches in fear as Azell kills Jackal with overwhelming skill. Azell orders Princess and others to flee, prepares to face the earth dragon alone. Azell issues a challenge to the Earth Dragon, invoking the Dragon Slayer's ritual. Kyrian reflects angrily on the ruined underground building he guards. Kyrian complains about the waste caused whenever they approach the ruins. Kyrian and Carlos inspect the ruins where relics are destroyed by proximity, baffling their expectations. They find a strange light crystal emitting blue and white energy at the ruin's core, prompting debate. Carlos activates magic to examine the crystal, triggering a violent vibration and sudden disappearance. They conclude the crystal leapt through space, disappearing rapidly and leaving the ruins silent once more. Arietta questions Azell about the Dragon Slayer's ritual, unfamiliar with the old tradition he recalls. Azell explains the Dragon Slayer's ritual as a sacrificial duel of wisdom and strength between dragon and human. The Earth Dragon accepts the duel with a slow nod, marking the start of the deadly Dragon Slayer's ritual. Azell orders Regina and the others to stay back and care for each other as he commits to the Forbidden One on one duel. Azell begins the ritual by charging at the Earth Dragon using instantaneous movement to gain the upper hand. Azell surfs a massive earth wave toward the dragon, impressing Regina and Honora with his daring skill. Azell strikes the Earth Dragon's neck, but the blow only leaves a faint mark on its stone, hard scales. Azell grits his teeth, realizing his current strength isn't enough to wound the dragon deeply. The Earth Dragon looks unimpressed and unflinching, protected by scales harder than steel and potent magic. Azell calls for Carlos' hidden aid, sensing the need for the special item preserved through centuries. Carlos' remnant teases Azell with sharp banter inside his mind before departing, triggering the ancient magic. The Earth Dragon senses Azell's struggle and reacts to the surge of power from the magical trump card. Azell grasps the dragon-making sword, its blue luster igniting hope and power within him. The sword's power fills Azell's magic pulses to full as his life ring vibrates wildly in response. Azell prepares to challenge the Earth Dragon anew, declaring his strength as a slayer of legendary foes. Every existence with dragon blood shudders from the birth of a new dragon demon chi. Azell embraces the dragon-maken and feels the surge of its ancient power awakening within him. The Earth Dragon senses Azell's newfound strength and responds with a fearful shudder. Azell wounds the Earth Dragon's neck just before it unleashes its devastating dragon's roar. The Earth Dragon screams in pain, experiencing agony for the first time in its life. Azell observes the immature Earth Dragon and recalls the ancient Dragon Slayer's ritual. The Earth Dragon's heavy dragon's roar is an overuse of power, exposing its vulnerable defenses. The gravely wounded Earth Dragon howls in alarm, sensing Azell's threat like an equal enemy. Azell uses instantaneous movement to dodge flying stones and closes the distance to the Earth Dragon. The Earth Dragon burrows underground to avoid Azell's assault, shaking the forest floor. Azell suppresses complacency and sharpens his focus to battle this ancient opponent wisely. The Earth Dragon charges through the earth with speed, making the ground tremble like a tidal wave. Azell stands on a tree, using it as stable footing against the forest upheaval around him. The Earth Dragon creates multiple Earth Hand constructs targeting Azell with elemental power. Azell swings the dragon-maken wildly, cutting through the earthen constructs with roaring sword energy. The Earth Dragon strikes Azell with its massive tail, catching him off guard in mid-combat. Azell is flung through the air by the tail strike, struggling but surviving the massive blow. The Earth Dragon's tail is badly injured from striking Azell's dragon-maken sword. Frustrated and afraid, the Earth Dragon unleashes its most destructive dragon's roar attack. Azell withstands the devastating shockwave, protecting himself with magical energy and fierce will. Azell summons his ultimate technique, Thunder Dragon's Horn, channeling powerful blue lightning into his blade. Azell breaks the sound barrier, charging through the Earth Dragon with his Thunder Dragon's Horn strike. The Earth Dragon falls heavily, wounded severely as a fountain of red blood bursts forth. Exhausted and injured, Azell stands shakily beside the fallen Earth Dragon's body. Azell mourns the fading dragon-maken, promising to revive it once strength returns. Azell collects and drinks the Earth Dragon's blood, symbolically claiming victory. The dragon's blood revitalizes Azell, healing wounds and flooding him with energy. The Earth Dragon's corpse glows and releases a spiral of energy, transferring strength to Azell. Arietta slowly wakes, sensing a strange magic nearby, stirring her from deep sleep. She recognizes the magic is like dragon demon power but somehow foreign and unsettling. Arietta realizes she is lying in a comfortable bed within the western border fortress. She recalls how she escaped the dragon's shadow while protecting Rick and Enora through relentless battles. A nervous soldier enters as Arietta rings a bell, addressing her with guarded respect. She queries about her location and how long she has been unconscious. The soldier informs her 4 hours have passed since her arrival. She insists on seeing Rick and Enora, receiving word that they are being treated in the infirmary. Rick rushes to greet Arietta with wide eyes, signaling relief at her awakening. Enora, bandaged and trembling, tries to stand but stumbles into Arietta's support. Enora breaks down sobbing softly while Arietta gently strokes the tears away. Enora worries aloud about Arietta's disheveled state and fears the head maid's reaction. Enora nervously complains to nearby soldiers about being left with men unfit to care for her. Arietta calms Enora and insists she rest to recover from the battle's toll. Rick coughs lightly, then prefaces a delicate question about Azell's fate. Arietta asks about Azell's return, hoping he survived the dragon's wrath. Rick requests Arietta to vouch for Azell before the commander to prove his trustworthiness. Surprised by the request, Arietta processes the gravity of affirming Azell's character. Arietta finds Azell chained in a cell, tired but alive, and demands his release with Knight's consent. The Knight complies quickly, removing Azell's heavy chains as he steps out relieved. Azell remarks on the army's cautious treatment and accepts the imprisonment calmly. The Knight promises Azell clean clothes and plans to hear his story soon. Azell relaxes in the stone bathtub as magical steam blooms from his revitalized body. After a refreshing wash, Azell contemplates trimming his beard but lacks a razor. Azell swiftly shaves off his beard with a single sweep, his face transforming completely. He dries off and dresses neatly, tying back his crimson hair to look like a splendid young man. Azell examines his reflection, flexing and noting his muscles are not yet defined. He reflects on the difficulty of regaining his former perfect physique quickly. Azell finds Rick Baran in the infirmary. Rick is surprised by his new appearance. Rick confirms Giles arrived safely with many men. Azell sighs with relief. Rick cautiously asks Azell what really happened during the Dragon Slayer's ritual. Azell describes the dragon's war caused by the dragon's shadow kidnapping the princess. Enora reacts surprised at Azell's youthful appearance. He laughs bitterly. Enora proudly insists on proper address and offers to cut Azell's shaggy hair sometime. Azell feels wounded when Enora calls him an uncle at age 26 but follows her to meet the princess. Azell meets a refreshed Arietta, groomed by Enora, in her room for an awaited conversation. Arietta playfully teases Azell about his surprisingly young looks. Arietta notes Azell's noble etiquette when drinking tea despite his rough background. Arietta suspects Azell's etiquette originates from an ancient noble culture long gone. Azell internally calculates that his old etiquette may cause misunderstandings in this era. Arietta senses Azell's hidden pain about his lost memories but chooses to trust him anyway. Arietta offers a reward to Azell, appreciating his aid and goodwill. Azell requests travel expenses, a travel pass, and a sword as modest compensation. Arietta remarks that Azell's modesty continually surprises her. Arietta offers Azell a knight title, but he humbly refuses despite its prestige. Azell explains his reluctance to accept the knighthood, citing lost memories and uncertainty. Azell shares his desire to travel freely, unsure of his roots or heirs after the war. Arietta regrets Azell's choice but requests he accompany her for 4 days as a trusted escort. Azell agrees to escort Arietta, sensing the need for caution and companionship. Azell contemplates the curse and revival that saved him, vowing to end Atein's threat once and for all. Azell requests access to the Western Fortress Library to learn about the changed world. He studies the history of the continent, discovering the collapse of the Natick Empire and rise of 7 kingdoms. Azell reads about the Great Darkness Plague that devastated nations and erased much knowledge and power. He reflects on Bayan's role in ending the plague and breaking the Church's corrupt grip on healing arts. Azell sneers at post-plague corruption and admires Bayan's defiance against the Church's power lust. He studies military reports of the Grand Dark Alliance, a mutated orc army threatening the Balan Forest region. Azell notes Dakin's leadership and tactical mind as the charismatic orc commander of the Grand Dark Alliance. Despite curiosity, Azell feels frustrated by the scarce detailed records on Dakin and the orc army. Giles arrives unexpectedly to find Azell, relieved to see him unharmed after recent conflicts. Azell jokes about Giles mistaking him for someone else, referencing his improved appearance thanks to Enora's care. Azell praises Enora's skill in grooming him, admiring her youthful expertise as the princess's maid. Azell asks Giles about the value of the dragon's corpse and the implications it holds. He hears of generous compensation for the dragon's corpse and prepares to escort the princess back. He hides the truth of killing the dragon, not ready to boast his real power. He reflects on the Dragon Maken's power boosting his energy and completing the dual rings of life. He acknowledges his luck in gaining power, but feels frustrated at missing mastery over dragon-demon magic. Giles informs him he's entitled to compensation from the dragon's remains and will escort the princess. Despite losing many comrades, Giles embraces his new role with pragmatic acceptance. Azell arrives at the dragon's corpse site and meets Arietta among the crowd. Arietta explains the dragon's corpse was dismembered for transport, but its eyes are missing. They suspect the dragon's shadow stole the dragon's eyes for their magical value. They are relieved the heart was destroyed and not taken, likely due to the dragon's battle wounds. Regina reports failure to a superior, facing a cold reprimand for the lost mission. Regina admits unexpected interference from a powerful dragon slayer during their mission. The black-haired lady demands confirmation about the dragon slayer's ritual and its deadly consequences. Regina confirms the deadly ritual's occurrence and its significance to her superior. Regina presents the stolen dragon eyes, now a rare and valuable magical reward. The eyes reveal the dragon's drained power, proving the deadly effectiveness of the dragon slayer's ritual. Despite failure, Regina is rewarded, puzzling her but affirming Azell's growing renown. She muses on Azell Zestringer's doomed destiny and her intent to encounter him personally. Azell experiences a lucid dream from the distant past involving an ancient ruined castle. In the dream, Azell and Carlos explore the ruined castle where the dragon demon king once ruled. Carlos expresses frustration over the lack of clues to dispel Azell's curse in the castle's magical lab. Azell reflects on his calm resolve despite the deadly curse endangering his life. Azell comforts Carlos, acknowledging their reversed roles since he was cursed. Together, they reach the Dragon Demon King's office with a haunting magical inscription on the wall. Carlos questions the Dragon Demon King's motives behind his world conquest. Azell recalls Atein's defeated acceptance of his failures and deadly curse he inflicted. In the dream's collapsing world, Azell praises Carlos's unwavering brilliance and loyalty. For days later, Azell trains and recuperates magical energy during Arietta's stay at the fortress. Azell denies training to increase magical energy, clarifying he is restoring what he once lost. Arietta announces her departure to the palace, preparing for the journey ahead. Azell dons leather armor, reminiscing about his days as a low-ranked soldier. Azell shares a heartfelt farewell with Rick Baran before setting off with the princess. Azell arrives early for the escort departure and meets the arrogant young knight Sir Bor. Sir Bor arrogantly dismisses Azell's presence and questions the princess's decision. Bor insults Azell, calling him an errand boy and warning him not to interfere. Azell struggles to suppress his rising anger at Bor's disrespectful challenge. Giles intervenes diplomatically to challenge Bor's harsh words towards Azell. Sir Bor disparages Azell's deed and loyalty to the princess, ignoring her words completely. Azell clenches his fist, barely holding back anger at the harsh insults from Sir Bor. Azell projects a calm, friendly aura despite Sir Bor's firm prejudice and mockery. Sir Bor disdainfully warns Giles about the princess's leniency and their long journey. Giles meets Sir Bor's challenge with a fierce glare, ready to defend Azell. Arietta and Enora arrive, halting the rising tensions between Giles and Sir Bor. Azell questions Arietta, surprised that everyone has gathered for the escort. Arietta explains that only 5 party members remain, and the others will return later. Arietta reveals her failed attempt to disguise her appearance through magic. Azell truthfully states that Arietta's attempt to hide her appearance only made her more noticeable. Azell thoughtfully agrees that having fewer escort members might be safer than risking too many. Azell asks if Enora will accompany them, and Arietta expresses concern for her safety. Enora boldly challenges the men, demanding they prove their confidence in protecting her. Sir Bor proudly assures Enora of his skill and ability to overcome any danger. Azell resigns to the party's decisions, acknowledging Enora's toughness and presence. Arietta praises Enora's courage and recounts the unusual assignment as her personal maid. Enora resolutely refuses to stay behind despite warnings, motivated strongly by the head maid's orders. Arietta sighs at Enora's stubborn spirit, surprised by her unyielding bravery. Enora reminds the men she will not be left unprotected, driving home her expectation of their competence. Sir Bor boasts of his skill to protect the group, boosting his proud knightly pride. Azell consents to the plan and recognizes Enora's resilience and skills. Arietta explains how Sir Bor was assigned to her escort by higher authorities despite her wish for a small party. Azell identifies Sir Bor as a skilled cord rope master by his energy control. Arietta inquires how Azell would fare against Sir Bor, teasing with playfulness. Azell claims he could cut off Bor's head with 3 strikes in his current state, shocking Arietta and Enora. Azell regrets his harsh words and decides to be patient until knighted by Arietta. Arietta smiles and offers Azell knighthood as a reward for his service. Azell reflects on the new system where skill grants knighthood without fealty oath. Azell asks if Arietta's knighting carries conditions, and she assures it's a generous power not yet fully used. Azell feigns surrender, influenced by Arietta's charm and youthful formality. The formal knighting ceremony is arranged with Giles and Sir Bor as witnesses. Azell jokes with Enora about addressing her as Little Miss Post Knighthood. Enora threatens playful punishment with Arietta's permission for Azell's rude remarks. He kneels as Arietta formally knights him with witnesses Giles and Sir Bor present. He receives a glowing white eagle emblem imprinted magically on the back of his hand. He learns this emblem is proof of knighthood, preventing impersonation and identity theft. He considers the costly future task of creating his own unique knight's crest. She orders departure from the fortress, asking Giles for direction to the capital. Bor insists on leading near the capital, gaining agreement from Arietta and Giles. Arietta dismisses stopping at town for lunch, ordering Enora to manage with what's available. He compliments Enora's horsemanship as they quietly travel along the uphill path. He tests his intuition about her skills, guessing she learned archery with horsemanship. Enora shyly admits she can't draw a strong bowstring or wield a sword. He laughs quietly at her honest answers, understanding the family's strict gender customs. Arietta appreciates Enora's hidden skills despite their irrelevance to maid duties. Arietta asks about Enora's family, learning about her siblings and their lives. Enora nervously shares her brother's studies in the capital, savoring memories of home. He insists on formal address as Sir Azell, since he is now a knight. They banter about titles, conceding Enora the upper hand in their playful dispute. He feigns partial memory recovery, mixing humor with fragmented recollections. He recalls an image of a flying dragon hunting at dawn, a mysterious symbol of his past. He wonders if dragons still guard the dukedom of Karzark in this new era. He hopes this memory will lead him to discover his true origins and homeland. Arietta leads the party as they camp near a small town, avoiding revealing her true identity. Arietta declines to notify the town lord to avoid delays and extended receptions. Giles and Azell agree to spar while Arietta watches with interest. Azell and Giles discuss age and skill, sparking banter with Arietta and Enora. Arietta reveals her dragon-demon magic heritage and respects Giles' achievements. Azell considers Giles' undisclosed ambitions despite his modest persona. Azell requests Giles to drop formal speech, leveling their friendship further. They prepare to spar, agreeing to restrain from dangerous techniques amid the garden. Azell surprises Giles by launching the first attack, changing their usual spar dynamic. Giles narrowly blocks the sudden attack, his focus sharpened by Azell's new power. Azell explains the essence of spirit order, revealing his mastery of mind-based techniques. Giles compares Azell's technique to illusions, astonished by its mind manipulation capability. Azell teaches that spirit order prioritizes mental training before physical mastery in combat. Azell reflects on the unique qualities and lost aspects of modern combat techniques. Giles exhibits advanced mental shielding techniques, blocking Azell's mind, influencing attacks. Azell admires Giles' strong mental defenses, recognizing their high standard. Azell evaluates the quality of modern spirit order techniques amid his reflections. They acknowledge the rarity of mind, affecting techniques and their declining use in current training. Azell ends their warm-up sparring, pushing Giles to acknowledge his superior sword skill. Giles admits defeat, overwhelmed by Azell's heterogeneous sword style and superior technique. Giles respectfully requests Azell to continue as his opponent while Arietta humorously comments on Azell's teaching style. Arietta jokes that Azell's teaching methods would prompt many complaints from students. Azell reveals he integrated multiple sword arts into his unique style, a decree immortalized by the Emperor. Giles expresses regret at not forcing Azell back even once despite his mightier magical energy. Giles apologizes for his shortcomings to Arietta. Azell is called mischievous in response. They discuss the Dragon Demon Duke, a legendary figure and Arietta's teacher. Azell recalls his lost memory and admits ignorance of the Dragon Demon Duke and Princess. Arietta confirms the fame of the Dragon Demon Princess, a common knowledge in this era. They clarify the difference between the Dragon Demon Duke's legend and the Princess' common renown. Azell contemplates meeting the Dragon Demon Duke, intrigued by his legendary status. Regina receives a report on the Dragon Demon Princess' small entourage, sparking concern. Nibrus freezes Regina's underlings with a silent magical hold to maintain secrecy during their mission briefing. Nibrus questions why Regina considers their mission complicated despite the Dragon Demon Princess' small escort. Regina explains the tactical advantages of a small elite force rather than a large slow retinue. Nibrus boasts her overwhelming power, dismissing concerns about facing the Dragon Demon Princess. Regina concedes Nibrus will act with utmost caution, emphasizing the mission's critical nature. Nibrus prepares to lead the mission to capture the Dragon Demon Princess, confident in her skills. Azell confronts Bor over dishwashing duties, refusing to be intimidated by his noble pride. Bor fumes with murderous intent, while Enora watches anxiously from a distance. Azell sarcastically questions Bor's noble pride and mocks his lack of knights. Bor draws his sword angrily and demands a duel to settle the insult before the princess. Princess Arietta contemplates the duel request with a conflicted but serious expression. Arietta permits the duel but warns that no lives must be harmed during the fight. Azell and Bor prepare for the duel, swords touching lightly as Arietta announces the start. Azell casually grips his sword, while Bor readies his shield and longsword in an aggressive stance. Bor taunts Azell's perceived physical weakness with scornful words. Azell acknowledges his physical flaws but remains calm and rational, ready for the fight. Azell promises to strike Bor hard but avoid injuring his cultivation power. Bor accepts Azell's challenge and invites him to attack first with noble honor. Azell closes the distance with a single step, disappearing the gap between them instantly. Bor's body shakes from the strike's impact, feeling pain even through his shield. Azell continues precise sliding strikes, forcing Bor to stagger back multiple times. Princess Arietta watches the duel with admiration and notes the interesting technique. Giles comments on Azell's technique, calling it spiteful rather than surprising. Bor finally sees through Azell's sliding strikes and attempts a counterattack. Bor struggles to regain balance after his counter but remains determined and praises Azell. He strikes Bor continuously, pushing him toward exhaustion and pain. Bor tries to avoid sword clashes, using his shield's shape to deflect strikes at an angle. Princess Arietta watches the duel closely, her expression showing admiration. Giles comments on Azell's technique, calling it more spiteful than surprising. Bor finally counters after reading Azell's sliding strikes. Bor struggles to regain balance but remains determined despite fatigue. Azell's sword passes through Bor's shield, grazing his chin and ending the duel. Arietta steps forward to stop the duel and declares Azell the victor. Bor accepts his defeat, shaken and humbled by Azell's skill. Azell compliments Bor's courage and technique, surprising him. Embarrassed, Bor admits his impoliteness and acknowledges Azell's skill. Azell makes a dry comment about Bor's chore washing dishes. Bor protests washing dishes as a disgrace and unworthy for a noble knight. Azell questions Bor's refusal to do tasks other than strength-based jobs. Bor explains chivalrous roles. Giles agrees while Azell doubts it. Azell presses Bor on who should prepare the camp without servants or squires. Bor admits he has never gone on a mission without servants or squires. Azell asks Princess Arietta if knights helped with chores during fast travels. Princess recalls Count Arhin and Sir Jarsten preparing camp and meals, much to her surprise. Bor is dumbfounded and blushes at hearing noble knights did menial chores. Bor confesses he never apprenticed under a knight, revealing a gap in his training. Azell reflects on Bor's prestigious background yet incomplete foundation in knighthood. Bor apologizes and vows to share chores and respect Azell's skill. Bor goes to wash the overturned dishes by the creek, accepting his chore. Arietta remarks on Bor's perplexing character, with Giles and Azell agreeing silently. Night falls. Azell, Giles, and Bor begin rotating night watches while women rest. Azell meditates during his watch, resonating with the surrounding manna. He senses a magical observation from an unknown figure watching them from afar. Azell reflects on their prior feeling of being watched while in town and the new confirmation of magical tracking. He contemplates that without covering their tracks, they risk an imminent attack from Dragon's shadow enemies. Azell considers 3 possibilities about the enemy's strategy while cautious in the northern route. He weighs the chance that the enemy is only tracking them, preparing to mobilize a larger force. Azell contemplates that the enemy may have set a trap on their chosen fastest route. He reflects on the mysteries of the Dragon's Shadow, a secretive organization based in the frozen north. Azell senses movement and Arietta wakes, restless and unable to sleep late into the night. Azell warns Arietta about an unseen enemy observing them with distant magical surveillance. Azell reveals his spirit order technique that detects when someone's gaze fixes on him. He explains how spirit order is a form of magic that masters the mind's control, a power few possess. Azell discloses how he subtly twisted Bor's senses to overcome his defenses during their fight. He ponders the loss of deeper spirit order knowledge in the current generation of practitioners. Arietta admires Azell's teachers and his ability to develop such unique combat skills. Arietta admits her battle experience was limited and acknowledges how Azell's presence saved her. He gives a tempered evaluation of her combat skills based on recent battles and her youth. Arietta teasingly calls Azell ill-tempered. He defends himself humorously as they relax amid the night. Curious, Arietta asks Azell about his experience against formidable foes in the war. He recalls the many near-death battles he endured during the Dragon-Demon War against fearsome enemies. Arietta asks about Azell's teachers, sparking memories from his childhood and past training. He remembers Rogan, his strict first teacher and retired mercenary who founded his sword art. Azell describes wandering as a young mercenary and encountering a mysterious armed swordsman. He recalls Baff, his one-eyed, armed second teacher who defied expectations as a sextuple master mercenary. He explains Baff's rise to sextuple mastership despite losing his eye and arm through relentless mental cultivation. Azell recalls a desperate night ambush where he fought back beside Baff with senses finely honed to survive. He survived by using heightened senses to fight one enemy at a time during the chaotic night attack. Baf recognized Azell's survival skill and asked if he would become his disciple after the battle. He accepted Baf's proposal, acknowledging Rogan's prior teachings paved the way for his survival skills. Baf's training relentlessly pushed Azell's senses beyond limits with brutal exercises in total darkness and physical constraints. He reveals training where his eyes and ears were covered, learning to react to attacks while tied and even suspended upside down. The aim was to never lose his senses in any situation, a harsh regimen that nearly cost him his life many times. He admits sometimes the training felt more like abuse, pushing him to question his teacher's sanity. Baf died from illness, but before passing he sought to pass on skills beyond what he had achieved. He trained under Baf for 2 years and surpassed his mentor's senses by age 17, becoming a quadruple master. Azell turns the conversation to Arietta's training under the Dragon Demon Duke, curious about her experiences. Arietta describes her eccentric and mad, tempered teacher, the Dragon Demon Duke, who taught her sword art. She recalls how the Duke insisted on teaching her without royal interference or favoritism. The royal throne agreed to the Duke's terms, and she trained with him exclusively from age 8. She narrates her grueling survival trials, including a solo month in a winter forest armed only with a sword. Arietta recounts a stealth challenge in a criminal-infested city meant to sharpen her wit and stealth skills. Azell admires Arietta's unconventional upbringing and her unique perspective shaped by the Duke's teachings. She expresses a wish to meet the Dragon Demon Duke again, and Azell offers to arrange it upon return. Arietta nervously requests a spar despite Enora's disapproval, craving the combat lessons Azell and Giles share. They joke about the arrival of Enora's wrath, lightening the mood as the night stretches on. Nibiris finds peace only in absolute darkness, but not in silence. A distant whisper pierces the darkness, questioning her unfinished business. She responds with cold resolve, poised to act once conditions align perfectly. Voices from across the continent debate the threat posed by the Dragon Demon Duke and Count Michael. Nibiris dismisses others' fears, yet acknowledges the dangers they pose. She explains she has delayed the mission, biding time for true darkness. Bor seeks guidance from Azell, his attitude shifting after honest effort. Azell and Arietta share a light-hearted moment about his growing popularity. Giles and Bor hesitate to spar with Arietta, awkward over her gender and station. Azell reflects on past wars where female foes wielded true power. To overcome their knight's doubts, Azell urges Arietta to command the sparring orders. Arietta dominates Giles and Bor in sparring, breaking their pride and prejudice. Bor shows respectful effort, his demeanor softened as he works alongside the team. Unexpected delays force the group to camp outside instead of their intended village refuge. Bor stands guard as Azell silently signals for quiet amid suspicious gazes. Azell detects hidden dark magic triggering his protective barrier silently. He senses a large enemy force nearby, their minds blocked by powerful magic. He recognizes Regina and Kyrion's energy signatures hidden among the foes. Azell wakes the group silently, preparing for a hidden attack. Arietta asks quietly, sensing the danger that Azell perceives. Azell senses a hidden enemy force despite Giles and Bor not feeling anything unusual. They all feel subtle vibrations through the earth, signaling the enemy's approach. Azell warns them to ready their weapons as enemies observe and prepare to strike. Magical waves pulse from about 50 meters away, warping space around the encroaching enemies. Darkness erupts like a thick fog, swallowing light and turning the camp pitch black. Azell realizes a hidden magical device was planted underground, awakening now to trap them. He deduces the enemy's earlier people in trouble were pawns in this betrayal. A massive dome, shaped darkness, like a tsunami, rises with an eerie laughter inside. Jackal, a revived dragon demon, approaches Azell in the pitch darkness, sword drawn. Azell mocks Jackal's decayed form and easily evades his clumsy attacks. Azell cuts Jackal in half with a flaming strike, his white flame burning the cursed body. Jackal's fragmented body reassembles rapidly, but his impatience leaves him vulnerable. Azell prepares his spirit order technique, Star's Breath, to finish off the revived foe. The white flame ignites Jackal's astral body, inflicting intense pain beyond the physical wound. Azell mocks Jackal's futile resurrection and the dishonor of being used as a pawn. He reflects on the dark energy fueling revived beings, amplifying their rage and pain. Arietta senses a powerful magical presence matching her teacher's level. Giles, Boar, and Arietta are overwhelmed by the oppressive magical power of the unseen foe. Azell braces himself as the enemy's strength reveals a terrifying human wielder of dark magic. Azell challenges the black-haired woman who conceals her true form under a human disguise. Azell uses his insight to see past her disguise, recognizing her as a dragon demon. The black-haired woman reveals her true dragon demon form, her horns and magic stone appearing. Nibirus announces her name and mocks Azell, who faces her with calm indifference. Azell confronts Nibirus with defiance, claiming his experience killing dragon demons. Nibirus sneers at Azell, her anger barely contained as she prepares to strike. Lightning crashes down as Nibirus unleashes a powerful strike aimed at Azell. Azell ambushes the monsters encircling the party, swiftly dispatching them. Nibirus growls in fury, furious at Azell's defiance and ambush. She casts a potent curse that conjures a spreading wave of darkness targeting Azell. Arietta warns Azell and tries to stop the cursed wave using her dragon demon magic. Nibirus mocks Arietta's resistance, claiming her sword is powerless against true magic. Azell stands unimpressed as the curse shatters 7 monsters, showing it failed on him. Nibirus reacts with disbelief and anger as Azell taunts her skill. Azell mocks her lack of skill and warns she will regain senses only after death. Nibirus holds back her rage, analyzing Azell's unique method with sharp focus. Nibirus acknowledges Azell's presence as a formidable opponent, readying herself for battle. Nibirus commands her allies to block Azell and capture Arietta in her magical domain. Nibirus summons a helper, gathering dead corpses into a dark swamp emitting evil energy. From the swamp rises a towering corrupted being burning with purple flame, paralyzing all in earshot. Nibirus refines the corrupted being's roar to target only the enemy party, maintaining control. The corrupted giant advances steadily towards Azell, sliding like on ice with unnatural grace. Arietta attacks Nibirus, striking her barrier with a white sword, but Nibirus walks across the air unbothered. Arietta's light sword attack slides off Nibirus' barrier with a casual wave of her hand. Nibirus shoots dizzying light arrows at Arietta, who forms a barrier to block the attack. Exploding projectiles blow Arietta away, and Nibirus mocks her struggle. Nibirus dismisses Boar as insignificant, as monsters rush towards him. Boar and Giles prepare to defend Enora and fight off the several dozen monsters closing in. Giles slashes quick sword energies cutting down monsters while Boar shields and counters. Boar roars a bestial mental wave, slowing monsters as he stomps and prepares his counterattack. Boar and Giles exchange sidelong glances as they defend against waves of enemies. Boar and Giles challenge each other to see who can slay more foes while protecting Enora. Nibirus approaches Arietta, proposing surrender to save her allies. Arietta rejects Nibirus' offer and instantly charges her back but strikes only air. Nibirus tricks Arietta with illusions, then strikes her with a lightning blow sending her flying. Arietta recovers on the ground, realizing Nibirus used multiple illusions to trick her. 7 illusions of Nibirus surround Arietta, accompanied by overwhelming magical interference. Nibirus warns surrender makes things easier, then unleashes lightning explosions as Arietta retreats desperately. Arietta struggles as she cannot predict Nibirus' magic. The lightning strikes come without a tell. Nibirus praises Arietta's skills yet dominates her with lightning, exposing her superior power. Arietta shields her eardrums with dragon energy against the thundering lightning strikes to maintain fighting ability. Arietta realizes brute strength alone won't overcome Nibirus and coldly assesses her chances.